Good morning, good evening, and good night. Answer me just one question. Have you just decided to make that decision? Are you finally joining the dark side? What I'm talking about today is the PolarStar Kythera. What we're gonna be doing is installing a Kythera into an M4 or a standard V2 gearbox, and also some of my tips and tricks, learning about some misconceptions and some things that I see people do wrong. We're gonna take this thing apart. I'm gonna show you guys how, if you needed to change anything on this, lubricate it, etc. And also we're gonna be talking a little bit about the differences in how to set these up for certain PSI limits for if you're playing indoor or outdoor. But before we get into that, I'd like to go ahead and thank you, the viewer. I can see you guys really love the content. I really appreciate that. We love making it. We're almost at 4,000 subscribers, so let's get the channel there. I just wanna let you guys know that I've been working on these Kythera engines for a while now, and a lot of them. So I'm pretty well versed in all their quirks and what kind of things bug me over time and how to really set these things up efficiently. This Mark 18 right here, which I have a video on that I'll link up above. This is HPA Kythera. Pretty much all my guns are Kythera, but I've installed about 4 Kytheras into V2 bodies, M4 bodies. If you like this optic, I'll link up a video up above for that too. I've also done V3s and also some more obscure, difficult platforms to get into. If you guys are looking at getting an HPA engine and you haven't fully decided on one, so let's talk about the benefits of the Kythera. So the thing that really sells me about the Kythera is the fact that it has that mechanical trigger feel. Just like a real trigger on a gun, you get that nice tactile feel. You don't get that AEG squish. It's more realistic. The Kythera is the only fully mechanical HPA unit on the market as of right now. And the benefit of that is you don't have things like a solenoid. You don't need any sort of electronics. You don't have to deal with a battery, a trigger board. This thing is truly the essence of plug and play. The reason I mentioned not having a solenoid, anything that's electronic kind of is gonna go down at some point. Surprisingly enough, I've actually seen a good amount of people talk about their solenoids going down in their HPA units and they need to replace them. If you're looking at getting an engine that's just gonna last the longest, I think the Kythera just really has all the others beat. It's just springs, levers, catches, and pins that's basically just operating this whole thing. It's extremely simple. Because of their mechanical nature, they're only semi-automatic, can't go full auto with these. That being said, that doesn't downgrade the Kythera whatsoever. I've heard people talk smack about the Kytheras, yet their jacks go down. Maybe it's because they don't know how to work the trigger, how to get it working right. Because I've seen people not understand how to properly set these triggers, and you could really make them feel great. I don't really see the appeal for going full auto, especially when most fields don't even allow it. And then also, if you're trying to kind of get away from the backlash that HPA already has, how can somebody get mad at you if you have a semi-automatic engine? You know, this engine is actually going to be going into my Car 15 build, which I am pretty close to being done with. I mentioned the Car 15 back when I made this video, which I'll link that up above if you like that ProTech helmet clone. With all that being said, let's go ahead and get down to the workbench and start working on this thing. All right, guys, so right here in front of us, we got some of the key tools that we're gonna need to do this job. You guys might not need all of these. Most of the screws on the Kythera are going to be a .050 Allen key. I have one that's a ball head and one that's straight. I got some Super Lube right here. This is synthetic grease. Literally anything in the airsoft world, Super Lube will cover you. I got a couple pin punches, some different sizes. This one is a 1/32, and then this is just a general small one. You might want to get a nice little small hammer for this stuff. Obviously some Loctite. And then we're going to do some modifications on our gearbox body, which that's what I'm going to use the Dremel for. And this is a really just dependent thing if your gun requires this for the buffer tube. All right, guys, so to go ahead and get started, we're going to disassemble this Car 15. This is just a standard M4, obviously. Inside of here is an AEG right now, so we're going to take that out. This lower that I want to swap out, I want to match these two. This video is going to have timestamps littered down below. You could go ahead and skip till we get straight to the Kythera. So first things first, I like to just take my buttstocks off. Simplest thing to kind of get on and off the gun. So we're going to take that out. Now what I want to go ahead and do is take the lower apart from the upper. Unfortunately, I don't have like actual push pins because this is an older body. And one thing you guys should have is some sort of bowl or some sort of tray to put all your parts in. There we go, sample. Pop these remaining pins out. There we go. There it is. Let's get this out and go ahead and remove the upper and the lower just like that. We don't need the upper or any of this. So from here, what we need to do is get this gearbox out of this lower. First thing we're gonna wanna do is take the grip off. All you need is just a standard Phillips. Got one screw out. Every grip is a little different. Yours might not be exactly like this. What we wanna do is pop this back plate out, just like that. You can see that there is a black and a red wire in there. So those need to get disconnected from the motor for us to safely pull it out. Not hard to do at all. Bam, as you can see, just get a pair of pliers and they're gonna pop right out like that. There it is, that's our AEG motor. And now lastly, we got 2 more screws that are gonna be sitting right down there in that grip, and just screw those things right out. Just like that, it's gonna pull right out. Just make sure your wires, you don't rip them all out. I'm gonna take those screws out of there. Now from here is my least favorite thing to do. Down inside of our buffer tube, there is a usually Phillips head screw. Could be different on your gun. This is the most annoying part because we gotta find some sort of a screwdriver that perfectly fits down in there. Especially when it comes to having an AEG, you have these wires in the way. And hopefully just by using this real long bit and this extension screwdriver, I could just reach down in there just fine and get it, yep. Looking into getting some tools for teching on airsoft guns, I would definitely recommend get yourself a really long screwdriver, because if you don't have the right tool for the job, it just becomes a hassle. Inside of there, there's the little screw, and it's a washer that holds it in place. Sometimes it's a little difficult to get it out, but if we just finagle it, there it is. Worked its way out just like that. We could just take our buffer tube right out just like that, and also our butt plate. Remember the butt plate. The amount of times I've put guns back together forgetting this. So that pin I mentioned before is gonna come in handy right now. Same thing with that soft hammer. Bam, knock it right out. And we're gonna remove our pin. Try to remember the direction that your pins go in, because there is a direction and you could wear them out over time. My mag release is actually how real mag releases work, where you push it and you unscrew it just like that. A lot of mag releases have a Phillips or Allen key on this side right here that you need to unscrew. Just get your mag release out. And one thing you could do to keep all these parts together and not lose them is just put them back the way they came. So from this point on, our gearbox is gonna slide right out of our body, just like that. And now we got our body and our gearbox. Okay, now from here, we're gonna get into the first stage of installing the Kythera. And what we need to do is have a nice and clear gearbox to put this thing in. So I'm gonna keep this gearbox an AEG, and I don't wanna ruin it, but for your purposes, your AEG might be dead. It might just be a piece of garbage. So what you could do is just go ahead and crack this thing open and just dump everything out, all the gears and everything internal. I have this fresh one, this empty one that I wanna be using for my setup, but a couple key things you might want to be aware of. You're going to see all over the place there are these bearings, and you can see these empty holes for them. You will not need those for the HPA unit, so you could just pop all those right out. This right here on this gearbox is the bolt catch. This one does not have one, as you can see. This is something you might want to keep, because that's going to allow, you know, the bolt catch to work how it should. And then flipping over on the other side, keep this plastic piece, which this right here is the safety select. Definitely want to keep this. This is very important. You'll see a spring right here in the safety. The safety select is already kind of sprung loaded right here, so you don't necessarily need it if you're missing it. So I'm just going to go ahead and unscrew this. Make sure you're using the right tool for the job. Just be delicate with it. There's no need to wrench on these things. This isn't going to be under any tension where it's going to be being opened up. We're going to go ahead and crack this open. I would recommend cleaning yours out, because all the grease that's in the gears when you open this thing up is going to be insane. Wipe it up with a paper towel, run it under the sink, scrub it with some soap, and get this thing super clean, because it's only going to make working on it going forward easier. So most times when you pop your gearbox open and remove all the AEG parts, what you're going to see, this is just a nut. Essentially, that's literally all it does. The screw that goes all the way through the buffer tube screws into this. But if you remember, when we just took apart the lower, we had to fully unscrew the buffer tube to get everything out, right? The gearbox out as well. I think it's really obnoxious to have to undo the buffer tube every single time. The buffer tube can wobble because it's just airsoft. It doesn't really hold in there all that well. So what I like to do with my gearbox to make things easier on me when I want to get back into this, what we're just going to do from this point on, roughly all the way back down to here. We are going to take our Dremel and chop all that out. We want to save some of this right here, but all of this right here we want to get rid of. If you're going to be doing anything with the Dremel, make sure you have some iPro for yourself. Okay, so I've now chopped out the two back pieces right here. They're going to be all nasty and burred up, so we want to clean it up. If you have a deburring tool, you could also just grab some sort of hand sander. We do want to be aware that our HPA line is going to come through here, and we just want to do everything possible to make sure nothing is going to nick that line into the future. And as for these two parts, just go ahead and toss them in the trash. Sometimes you might need to open up this hole and drill this out a bit more for your HPA line to come through here. In this case, luckily, I don't need to touch it. That is pretty much everything I'm doing for this gearbox. So right here, I got the Kythera in front of me. So I just want to preface real quick that this one that I got is used, but like I said, I've gotten Kytheras before and new ones. So if you do get a brand new Kythera, it's going to come in this box. You're obviously going to get a macro line, a extra big spring, some washers, and a couple of these little set screws. If you are using a different kind of gearbox where you need to change out the piston head, that's part of what you're gonna see, just how to remove that. One thing I'm also gonna recommend is getting yourself a nice line, and I'm not a fan of the macro lines just because they could pinch. This is what I'm using for mine. So when you get your Kythera, it's gonna come locked like this. Just understanding the anatomy. This right here is the trigger link. This screw right here is the over travel screw. Right here we have the sear screw. This right here is the sear. And up top right here we have the set screw. This is the little charging line that they come with. These Kytheras come with this thing locked. They ship it like that just so it doesn't get messed up. So simply all you got to do, this set screw, you're just going to back this thing off, and you're going to see your trigger link release, and now it's going to activate, right? So the two ways to cock your system with no air, you could just push the piston back just like that, or you could charge the charging line. That bigger spring that's going to come in that Kythera box, you're going to get two springs. So inside of the Kythera, traditionally, you're going to get a 5-pound spring. And then the one that's going to be outside of it in that box is going to be a 10-pound spring. Roughly the 5-pound is going to be 130 PSI below. 10-pound is going to be 130 and up. Playing outdoor fields, I would do the 10-pound spring. If you're going to be shooting indoor and doing indoor fields, I would do the 5-pound spring. If you try to use the 5-pound and turn your regulator up, it's just going to be maxed out at a certain point and only reach a certain FPS or joule limit. We're going to want to swap out to that 10-pound spring. Make sure that this is backed off all the way. And now we're going to unscrew the entire engine sleeve, and then we just want to be aware of that over travel spring right there. Just make sure it doesn't go flying. That's what it's going to look like when it comes off. We're just going to pull the piston out like that. Then there's this other silver sleeve, and then right in here we can get into the spring and everything fancy right there. See how this pin is holding on to this little catch right here? We need to be able to knock that pin out. Bam, just like that. We didn't take it all the way out, just out enough for us to now be able to pull this out. So now that we have that, what we want to do, push the sear in and the trigger at the same time, and then the whole thing is going to come out. So the sear and the trigger. You could visually see the difference between the 10 and the 5-pound because the 10-pound is lighter color and the 5-pound is a darker color spring. We could also go ahead and swap out our piston head size if we needed to. You also saw me take that off way earlier before I even got to this point. That's when you would have swapped that out and you could have just moved on from there. The last thing we could do is actually go ahead and take this sear completely out. See this pin coming on both sides? We're just going to knock that thing out. All you should be able to do is push that sear in and just kind of lift it up and about. And that's pretty much how you disassemble the entire Kythera. Very simple. One thing while we did that, inside of here, where this over travel spring sits, there are 3 washers. We need those washers, so make sure we do not lose those. And that's what those extra washers are inside of our little baggie. Since I particularly have a used engine, clean this thing and re-lubricate it. These are the only parts that need cleaning. Take a towel and some alcohol. This right here is where the majority of the grease is going to be on the entire engine on this back part. So we're going to clean up this entire part. This little internal sleeve, it's going to have grease all the way around it, especially inside. We got the actual piston head and just the inside of this. The key points that we're going to be lubricating here, all of these little O-rings, this is where we're going to be the most generous with the grease. All up on this Q-tip, just like that. And we're just going to grease this thing up. And now what we want to do is go ahead and lube up these O-rings right here. We're going to hit these O-rings. We could also just go ahead and give the rest of this piece a little bit of love. Now with this piece, pretty much just grease up here. Just right here is essentially what you need, and I'm just gonna go ahead and use the residual to get that. Get a nice little amount, and we're gonna grease up mainly deeper inside of there. You're gonna see like a step. Kinda wanna grease up the step more than you want the entire rest of the sleeve. All right, now when we put this thing back together, you can see that there's a big slot right there. That's not the right way. It doesn't go like that. It goes like this. We're gonna wanna push down that sear and just reverse that motion before. Now we want to try to line up this pin, put the washers in there first, and also that spring is just going to easily slip down in there. Reverse everything we did. We're going to see that there's a little cutout on that side, and that is going to also match a little window that you could see in there. And that is what the charging spring slots into that you saw before. If we're swapping over to that heavier spring or keeping that normal one, we're just going to put that on just back like that. And now we're going to slide this back in. When you push it in, push the trigger down and you're gonna feel it catch. And now you can let go of it and you'll see the trigger kind of works again. Now we're gonna wanna put this charging string back into place. So just make sure those washers go in there just right. And now we're just gonna wanna beat that pin back into place. Bam, just like that. So now that's not going to move. It's gonna work how it should. We're gonna take this inner sleeve and these two little cutouts face outwards. Just gonna put it back like that, very simple. The direction doesn't matter at all. Now we take our nozzle, slide that right in there, and our sleeve once again. As we screw this in, be aware of this over travel spring. Extremely simple. So if you needed to do any sorts of change or fix with any of those parts that you just saw, that's how you get into the Kythera. We're going to get into tuning the trigger. So this is the point where we might want to go ahead and connect some air. So I'm gonna go ahead and install my line right now. Everything from this point on, we wanna start Loctiting. So especially this line right here, we're gonna wanna get this thing nice and gooped up with some Loctite, and we want to just tighten it down. I have my HPA tank right here with some air coming through this line. You can go ahead and adjust the trigger all just by pulling the trigger manually every time. I'm gonna go ahead and plug this thing up with some air, and now you'll see our engine works just fine. I'm just gonna preface that we are tuning the trigger to feel better. With the Kythera, you do not need to tune the trigger. As long as you back out this screw right here and you release the tension off this trigger link, you're good. You could throw the thing into a gearbox and be fine. But we could also tune this trigger so we could get rid of all the slack and the squish, and it could just be very tactile. To kind of understand what we're focusing on, the over travel screw, the sear screw, and then the set screw. The set screw and the sear screw are kind of the only ones that are changing something mechanically, and the over travel screw is just preventing your trigger connect to, you know, travel more. First, we're gonna work on the set screw, and we want to go ahead and make sure all these are Loctited. Back it all the way out, dab a little bit of Loctite on it. We're gonna push this thing in until we feel some tension. I'm starting to feel some tension now, all the way up until it fires. Just like that. From there, we're gonna want to go a little under half of a turn. So like right there. And now from here, what we wanna do is work on that sear screw, because as you can see, I could push the sear in and then fire it, and push the sear in and fire it. So what that means is that sear screw isn't activated just enough. Since this is a longer one, I don't need to back it all the way out. I have it out just enough where I could dab a little bit of Loctite on there. And now, since this engine has already been fired, since you pushed that top screw all the way in, we're gonna go until this releases the sear. There we go, it just released, right? And now, since it just released the sear and we're at that point, just like how we went a little bit over a half turn out, we're gonna go a little bit over a half turn in. And if you did it like that, fully released, and your gun is going full auto, you know that you've done it a little bit too much, so you want to back that sear off just a little bit. You can see that there's just a tiny bit of squish until the trigger actually activates. but that is pretty damn perfect right there. Now what you want to do, the over travel screw, essentially the goal is once you push the trigger and it activates, you don't want the trigger going any further because you want it to just stop. You want to know that it's done shooting and there's no further squish. I know for a fact that this screw is already Loctited by the previous owner with this screw all the way to the point where we actually can't fire the gun anymore. So we're going to keep going. And now I can't. Now we want to back it out, I'd say a full rotation. And we are solid. Going forward, if you install this and you do end up having some sort of trigger issues, it's one of these 3 screws that's causing that problem. If too much air is getting released and it's going full auto, it's the sear. If your trigger is failing to engage and actually shoot out air, it's going to be this set screw up top. And then if you're pushing it and then nothing is happening, like you're just hitting a wall and it can't go anywhere, then it's going to be this. So now we got our trigger set up pretty darn perfect. This thing feels nice and smooth. I know this seems like a lot because I'm showing you like every possible thing that you could do with the Kythera, but we are now in the home stretch. All we got to do is drop this thing into our gearbox and get it back into our gun, is set this thing up into place. One thing you might want to consider if you're having some sort of nozzle issues, I've had gearboxes before where I've needed to put a washer right around this so the engine isn't actually moving, because I've had engines where they actually rock a little bit back and forth in your gearbox. Just be aware of that. If it's rocking back and forth, you might need to do that. I have one of these fancy little speed triggers that are adjustable. If you pair a adjustable trigger with the Kythera, literally every single ounce of slack is going to be taken off that trigger and you're going to get nothing but a pure tactile feel. I always recommend with the Kythera to get one of these adjustable triggers with these adjustable screws. If you just use a stock trigger, that spring is still going to take up a lot of that space and you're going to still get that squish. Get one of these triggers. I actually don't like the straight ones all that much. I'm going to change it out with one of the standard NATO ones. If you go on Amped and you like the look of the standard NATO triggers, Amped sells these adjustable triggers that are that style in all different colors. Figure out what we want to do with our reset line. This is a fail-safe if the system ever gets jammed, but I've truly never had a Kythera ever jam where I need this. Some people will jam this and the line through the same hole. I try to put this specifically right through there so they each have their own separate line to go through and don't have to interfere with each other. We got to try to maintain holding everything together and put the gearbox in. You could see how crucial it was to deburr those edges because our line is genuinely sitting right up against that. And we're gonna screw this whole thing back into place. Go ahead and give this a nice little squeeze. These screws are already kind of stripped, so I just gotta be careful with how I'm doing this. If I plug this thing back up with air. So you could see what I'm talking about, how there's a little bit of that extra squish before you hit the wall. Then you go further. I don't like that squish, so all I'm gonna do is simply take my Allen key and adjust that trigger. Zero squish anymore. All I feel is the wall from that Kythera. All right, now from this point on, the Kythera is essentially all installed into our gearbox and we're good to go. For the folks who might not know exactly how to put this back in place, let's go ahead and drop this back in. So first things first, we wanna run that line all the way through. Same thing with this. Make sure that goes in all the way. We just kind of want to be aware of the way that trigger sits in there. I want to go ahead and get that first little pin into place. Push the pin in from the right side first. Last thing to kind of hold this thing into place is we're going to get this pin in there. This pin is going to ride up against the HPA line now that that's there. So kind of want to just be aware of that. Tighten this thing back up. Mag release back into place. You put the long end first, then the spring, and then the actual button. Screw it the rest of the way in. One thing with these grips is these motor holes right here, smaller than the actual lines themselves. A lot of people don't even use the bottom plate anymore, but I actually like the plate. It just adds a little bit more weight to the grip and it feels nice to me. What we want to do is grab a big old bit, put this in a vise and kind of just drill it out with a hand drill. So I literally did that within about like under 5 minutes. That was a lot faster than I thought. I did end up going to a 31/64 bit, and yeah, it seems to clear just perfect. Just like I did before, I'm gonna kind of deburr these edges real quick. So we're first going to need the base screws. Take our line, push it all the way through. The same hole that I put this through, that the wires initially go through, I'm going to match up with that same hole, or else it's not really gonna work. So the way I like to get these screws in that makes it really easy for me, that I found, is I want to take my long screwdriver once again, and then I have these medical forceps kind of lock into place once you grab something with it, just like that. I take the medical forceps, lock them into place, find the screw hole, and start screwing it in with the forceps just a bit to get it started. Swap over to my screwdriver and just finish it off. If you, once again, are looking for some good tools, I would definitely recommend these forceps scissor things. Take my base plate, slip that through. Now these screws, we want to be careful with them. These are going straight into plastic, and these are very coarse threads, and they always tend to strip out very easy. So I really don't put much pressure into these at all. Once they kind of sit flush, I just let them be. Now the very last thing to do is to install the buffer tube. I'm going to grab a washer right here and then a new nut. But what we're gonna start off by doing is just dropping this thing in here. To make this process easier, I like to already kind of have a hold onto it so then it doesn't move. And I kind of just grab the whole thing like that. Put that on, stick the buffer tube through with that screw now sticking out. Put the washer on. Drop a good bead of Loctite, and now push that nut in. Hold that nut in place as we screw this thing down. Super secure, so you don't ever have to deal with it, hopefully, again. Anytime we want to get to the engine, we no longer have to take this off, which is super convenient. We're going to drop in that little bolt release, grab our upper, slide this together. All right, so I now got the gun all back together, and if we go ahead and plug this in one more time, it's going to work just fine how it should be. The Kythera is such a great engine. I've actually never had any issues with them. Anytime I've had issues with it is just some sort of stupid alignment with a hop-up unit or something. Hopefully in this video, I gave you guys a nice, concise understanding of what's going on when you're trying to install this and what all the parts mean and what they do. Hope you guys appreciate the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys learned something. Comment your guys' opinions on the Kythera engine and some of your tips and tricks down below for installing them. Thank you guys so much for watching. Really appreciate it. And I will catch you guys in the next video. See ya.